Okay. Hey. Hey. Oh my goodness. Okay, so if you are just coming in right now, hi, make sure that you say hi to me in the chat. Otherwise, if you're watching this after the fact, we have a lot of questions that we're going to go through, and I did not prepare at all, so I do not have anything on the screen. So you can just go into the description to see the questions that we're going through. I also have that in the Discord. If you haven't been in there yet, you should 100% join. And as always, all of the links are in the description. So, okay. Before we get into questions, I just wanted to share a little bit about what's going on with me based on where you are and what you've seen on social medias. I have been a little MIA, and honestly, I really, really hoped with rebrand that I would be less anxious. But hope is not always reality, unfortunately. And as a person, with mental health background, I've been doing mental health work for over 6 years. And I just believe in full transparency with everything. And yeah, anxiety has not been great. My stomach has, I get a lot of reflux feelings. So just wanted to share that with you. That's why I haven't been as present. It's been a little rough lately, but hopefully in the future, it won't be as rough. I'm still working on setting better boundaries with social media and comments, and we'll get there. We'll get there. If you're just joining, come say hi in the chat. I have it pulled up so I can see. Just want to see where you're at. How is it going for you? How has your mental health been? And also, what are some things that you are excited for? I am excited for it's almost August. Can we believe that it's almost August? It is over halfway done with YouTube. Oh my god. My brain is focused on YouTube right now. It's halfway done in 2025. I'm not sure what's going on here. Time has been going way too fast, but that is what it is. So anyway, the questions that we have some amazing questions. We have, what is the deal with appetite suppression and ADHD medication? Is there anything different about different cuisines and how they might have different nutrient profiles? How may those affect ADHD? Alcohol makes ADHD worse, but is there a limit to this? What's the research with creatine and ADHD? Can fermented foods help ADHD? Does protein with ADHD medication actually help them work better? What's the research with cocoa powder and ADHD? And then, there's two more. How can I make better food choices with PDA, pathological demand avoidance? And then also, what is the research on ADHD dementia? What can I do to help that? So again, if you're watching this retrospectively, you can just jump to any of those. Hopefully YouTube decides to create some sort of markers for the timing. If it doesn't, that's the order, so you can kind of scroll. Also, hey, how is it going, Rodrigo? I hope that you are doing well. I just was talking a little bit about how I haven't been doing a live for almost a whole month, and it's been good. It's also been kind of sad because I actually really like this time that we have, because I like talking to you all, because I'm actually a social person. And working from home means I don't get to talk to a lot of people. And so that's also why I love recording podcast episodes with others. I should make a podcast list and set that up in my bio so that all y'all can actually start listening to those, because there's quite a few that I've done, or other people have interviewed me, and those are always fun to go through. But yeah, as always, throw things into the comments if you have a question, and I try to prioritize the questions in the comment section because y'all are here, and so we can have a fun conversation. So also, thank you about the earrings. I make jewelry. That is one of my many projects that I do. Lots of hobbies, classic ADHD thing. All of my stuff is right there, right behind me down there. So, yeah. Okay, let's get into the first question with ADHD, appetite suppression, and medication. So, I recently wrote about this on my blog, actually. So, if you haven't been on my website, I have a blog and I throw it's basically a research paper every single week for all y'all, but in easy to digest format. If you're not in the newsletter, you should join that, because that's where you get the actual notification that, hey, I put a blog post out and you probably want to read it. So with appetite suppression, the really interesting thing that not a lot of people know is that dopamine actually affects our hunger signals. It's really interesting. Actually, a lot of our neurotransmitters affect our hunger signals as well. So think serotonin, that also affects our hunger. It's closer to the fullness ones that it tends to work more toward. Dopamine we tend to see more things with hunger with dopamine. So just think about that for a second, right? If we are having a stimulant that releases more or allows for more dopamine in our brain, then for some reason our brain, because it has more of that dopamine, it thinks that we've already eaten, even though we haven't, just because dopamine helps with our signaling for hunger and fullness. So that's the really hard part. And personally, that's what I'm actually a little bit nervous about, because I know I need medication because it has been really, really difficult. But I already have a lot of issues with appetite suppression just because that's how my body is itself. And so going on a stimulant medication, that could make it worse for me. However, it also could help with, getting the motivation to even eat. So there is that question of what's the worst thing, right? So that's kind of the biology behind why do we get appetite suppression with ADHD medication. It is a lot more complicated than that, but everything in life is more complicated than that. I will say that for some people, it's really, really beneficial, because most people with ADHD experience that binging and having too much ghrelin, too much leptin, or too little leptin. It's the research in the hunger hormones is really complicated and different, mainly because there's different subtypes, I believe, of ADHD and hunger. It's just very confusing. But for a lot of people, they have overactive hunger, and so this could actually help them a lot more. In the blog post, I'm 99% sure I have one on how to work on improving hunger signals when you have the appetite suppression, and how to actually eat when you have the appetite suppression. So make sure that you go into the blog to read that. Otherwise, I also have a freebie. Whenever you sign up for my newsletter, you don't have to sign up for the full thing, but you can get my free ebook about ADHD eating hacks, and I think it's really helpful because I use them every single day. One of the best things for me has been scheduling my eating times, honestly. As much as I hate to say it, telling myself that I have to eat, it works. But having them in eating windows, that's something that I find super helpful. If any of you have more ideas of things that are helpful, because I'm sure I don't cover everything, make sure that you throw that in the comments, and then I can share some of those for anyone who's watching retrospectively, or if you are also just watching right now. So any ideas you have to help people with appetite suppression? All right. Is there anything different about different cuisines and how they may have different nutrient profiles and how they might affect ADHD? So this one's really complicated, not because different cuisines are complicated. I mean, yes, kind of, but more the fact that we just don't have research, unfortunately. We do know that more of a westernized diet, which is a high fat, high sugar diet, not the best for ADHD. We don't know that specifically. We just have associational research. So, like, it might be that people with ADHD are more likely to gravitate towards high-fat foods, high-sugar foods, and not necessarily that's impacting their ADHD. However, we do know that that type of diet is also just not good for the human body in general. So I would recommend against doing that as much as possible. But I have to be honest, I gravitate toward that too. The way that we can make sure we don't gravitate toward it too much is through, oh my gosh, my computer is almost dying because I don't have it plugged in. The way that we can help that is through consistent eating. I know it's kind of boring to say, but that is the thing that actually helps. If we actually eat every single day, often throughout the day, like not often, but like three meals a day, it's still not plugging in. Give me like 2 seconds. I should probably just get up and look behind my computer. So my husband gave me this computer, not like gave it to me, his work like had new computers. So I've been navigating it and it's been a lot better for me. There we go, we're plugged in. It's been a lot better for me because my little laptop was not very powerful. And I have a lot of things that I need to do with it. But okay, anyway. Different cuisines. Western diet, yeah, that's probably not going to be the best for us. But it's easy to gravitate toward. Also, it's just, for a lot of people, I don't know, where are you all living here? Like, whoever is in here, just share where you're at. Because if you're from the U.S., we have a lot more phenomena called food deserts. And so for a lot of people, it's almost impossible not to eat a westernized diet because they just don't have access to the foods that are less full fat, less full sugar. It's really hard. And so yeah, we have to consider all of that at the same time. But if you do have access to a lot of different foods, what I would say is honestly eating more of I know there's a ton of different Asian styles, but more of a traditional Asian cuisine tends to work really well because they have a lot of spices and a lot of different herbs, and those contain a lot of antioxidants. And so for a lot of us, we don't consume, if you're in the States, especially in the Midwest, here in the Midwest, we do not flavor our food. We do not use spices or herbs. We just have salt and pepper. Maybe pepper. But that is really helpful because they contain a lot of antioxidants, and antioxidants are really important for our brains. So, yes, lots of herbs, lots of different seasonings, really good. And they tend to eat a lot more fiber than we do. So a lot of more Asian cuisines tend to have a lot of beans. They tend to have a lot of vegetables. And it's not just a lot of vegetables, it's a lot of different kinds of vegetables. And that's really the core of like what I talk about in my different ebooks. Having variety wherever possible. I know it's not possible for a lot of us because a lot of us also have sensory issues. So doing what you can, even introducing one different food for your week, that's great. That's going to do really good things for your gut microbiome. I just don't want to shame ourselves. That's what makes us not do anything good, you know? So I guess that's my take. Again, like I said, we don't have any specific research, but that type of eating tends to be really helpful. The other thing with it is that it tends to be community based. Like creating the food is community. Creating like those soups, right? Like it's a lot of community at the same time as the food. So I just think that that is another reason why eating more like in that type of cuisine is just beneficial for us, because it not only gives us all of those nutrients that we need, but it also does a lot for our community And when we eat with people, it activates a lot of different aspects of our brain. It's also easier to eat in general. So if you have the appetite suppression, you can actually eat a little bit easier because you are with other people, and it can activate the mirror neurons in your brain where you are able to override some of those things. And then it also has the conversation aspect where you don't eat so fast. And when you don't eat too fast, that actually helps your gut as well. So otherwise, Mediterranean style diet, that has been studied pretty extensively. Hey, welcome. I hope that you are doing well. I'm always happy to do this. I said this before, the lives, I just really enjoy talking to you guys. It's not as fun, I think, like as my Patreon ones where I get to see your faces and we can have a real conversation, which is actually tomorrow. So if you're not in the Patreon, make sure that you join that because our monthly session is tomorrow. It's at 9 a.m. Central Time. But yeah, I love doing these. I love talking with you guys. Yes. Rodrigo, you said, I've been thinking, since most of us neurodivergents have so many comorbidities, since you started this path of self-regulating with food, what do you think would be about, I cannot read. What would you think about would be a good trial and error with trying new foods? I'm assuming that's the end of your sentence, with foods. It depends, right? Or food supplements, do you think having a journal is the best thing, or have I found something different? Ooh, that's actually such a good question. Obviously it depends on every single person. Gotta say that nuance, right? For me, journaling never worked. Maybe it's because I just am averse to journaling. I don't have like trauma based with it, but I was very religious for almost my entire life. And so I did a lot of journaling to that entity. And so it's harder for me now to do any sort of journaling. So it could potentially be helpful for another person, right? If you do journal, I encourage us to think about, like, not the morality of the food. Like, honestly, maybe not even how it makes us feel. A little bit maybe about how it makes us feel, but just about how, like, what did I eat? What can I push myself to eat? And pushing past our barriers of our mind. I know that can also be a little hard because it's safety too, you know? Like, if we are in a space ourselves where we're not actually feeling very safe, I don't usually encourage people to try new foods just because it can be harder for us to actually want those foods, and it can make our bodies feel a little bit less safe. And that's actually why I encourage people to start off with learning your interoception, learning your nervous system regulation, because that's the foundation. Once we have a body that we understand and can feel safe with, then we're able to actually eat those foods. We're actually able to, like, not have as much anxiety with it, and our nutrients are going to get better absorbed because our vagus nerve actually affects how well we absorb nutrients from foods. And so if we have like more of that stress response, even if we don't feel it a whole ton, because stress response can come from just not sleeping, from not eating enough or not eating consistently. It's more the not eating consistently that a lot of us have difficulties with, right? And so I think that's where I would actually recommend people starting off with for trying new foods and trying to stop self-regulating with food. I mean, self-regulating with food is fine, in my opinion. It's just, is it a choice, right? Is it a choice, or is it something that we're mindlessly doing? Because if we're choosing to self-regulate with food, that's an entirely different thing. In my opinion, at least. So I think that is what I'd personally recommend. Work on developing your ability to understand what your body needs, and then also work on developing those skills to regulate your nervous system before we try to add something that might not feel as safe to our bodies, even if it might like in our brains feel safe to try something new, it might not, you know? Yeah, I think that is what I'd say. If any of you want to like actually dive deep into how to do this, obviously my ebooks go through that. It's in my store. I tailored it to it's my experience essentially, but it's also through psychology because that's my expertise, that's my background, and how do you connect different experiences of your body with those real feelings, because a lot of us have that difficulty with that disconnect. So that is what I'd recommend to start off with. Yeah, what do I love to eat for breakfast? You know, that's a great question. Changes every day. I was thinking about doing a series on Instagram of every so often I will just share like what is my latest breakfast that I've been eating, what's my latest lunch I've been eating, because those things change relatively often. What I have been at Aldi, so I shop at Aldi because it's cheap and it's not overwhelming, and if you don't have Aldi where you are, I'm so sorry because it is honestly my favorite grocery store. I've even made a jingle in my head for them that I'm not going to share out loud because I don't know if you guys want to hear me. But there's like these 20 grams of protein little cups of yogurt, Greek yogurt, that have 0 sugar in them. That has been my go-to lately. Not because I love it, but because it is super simple and I don't have to think about it, and it doesn't have a lot of sugar, and sugar is fine, but it's really easy to overconsume sugar, and that can actually harm our dopamine receptors, and I want to make sure that I have as good functioning dopamine receptors as I can. So I always err toward anything that has like saccharin or stevia or aspartame. That always is helpful. And then since that doesn't have any fiber, I always add something with, okay, technically it has 1 gram of fiber, but like that's nothing. So I have been adding chia seeds to it because chia seeds is a great source of fiber. It's also a great source of a lot of different nutrients that our bodies need, especially for ADHD. And then I also tend to have some fruit on the side. So protein and fruit in the morning is usually what I try to gravitate toward. Otherwise, for other breakfast, on the days that I just can't chew in the morning, I don't know if any of y'all get that, but that is something that I experience because I don't know, sometimes it's just really hard, right? And so I just need to drink something, and that way I still get the nutrients that I need to start off my day, because we want to make sure that we're eating breakfast within ideally a half hour of waking up. I know that's not realistic, but that really sets off our metabolics for the day, and it can improve our insulin signaling throughout the day. It can reduce our hormones that we don't need as much of, like the overactive hunger signaling. And so it also improves just how our body regulates itself throughout the day, and emotional regulation. That is something I need in my life. So anyway, tangent, but otherwise, like on those mornings, I will just throw some plain Greek yogurt. I always go with full fat, but that's mainly because I'm a woman, and full fat Greek yogurt's really good for us because it helps with our regulation of estrogen. Speaking of estrogen, sorry, another one, tangent. Not tomorrow, that's Thursday. Friday, I'm dropping the latest ebook in the Patreon, and it's about hormones, which is specifically testosterone and estrogen, and how that relates to ADHD and how you can best manage those because I can't help you prescribe and give you those, but I can help you learn how to regulate them as much as we can. So that is going to be the new ebook for the month of August. So make sure that you're in there if you want to get this month's ebook and next month's. Make sure that you join either today or tomorrow. But yes, that smoothie breakfast is Greek yogurt, and then depends on if I like like if I want it, I'll add some flaxseed to it to give me some more fiber, but I always add cocoa powder because that gives me some fiber too. Plus it's really good for the brain, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit too, just what is the research with cocoa powder and ADHD. But then maple syrup, because I like maple syrup, and soy milk, because soy milk is really good for females. It's also fine for males too, but a lot of phytoestrogen is really good for us because it reduces our risk of breast cancer. Very important. So I love soy milk. It's really good for us. It also has protein. So, and then what is the last ingredient? There's one more: peanut butter or almond butter. I've been doing almond butter lately. I don't know why. I just haven't, because I just wanted to do it. So that's the other breakfast that I tend to gravitate toward. If you guys want to throw any more breakfast ideas, like what have you been eating for breakfast? Because I just think it's a great, helpful way for all of us to share what's been working for us. And then I can give all y'all ideas, because honestly, yeah, breakfast is really hard. It really is. So one of my friends does chicken and broccoli. They just do that for breakfast or leftovers. So, plenty of sunlight also reduces the risk of cancer. Yes. Except for, like, you gotta make sure you wear sunscreen. Otherwise, you'll increase your risk of sun cancer. Skin cancer. But, yeah, vitamin D is so good for us. Especially women. Honestly, literally all the nutrients are really important for women. Also males, right? But, yeah, we have a lot going on for us. But, okay. Well, let's get through some of the other questions. But yes, there's some of your breakfast ideas in there. Okay, so the next one was about alcohol and ADHD. So, yeah, alcohol makes ADHD worse. I have a few videos out there on, like, why it affects us differently, how it affects us differently, why we want to reduce it as much as possible, but also how can we realistically reduce it in a neurodivergent, ADHD-friendly way that's not going to induce shame. So if you haven't, like, if you struggle with alcohol and stuff, I would recommend watching those videos. But, let's see. Is there a lower limit, though? Honestly, the thing is, we don't have a lot of research. What we do know is that it is a, like, toxin at any level. I don't recommend anyone drinking it every single day. I especially don't recommend multiple at one time. If you are going to drink, just drink one at a time and not, like, multiple. I love mocktails. But what about NA beers or NA ones, like, non-alcoholic, that still have a little bit in it? Those are probably fine. Tinctures. I take tinctures every so often, and those have some alcohol in it, right? So it is kind of a matter of how much are you doing, like, the dose, and how often are you doing it. Again, like, the thing is, we don't have a lot of research at all about how alcohol affects our general constitution in super duper small amounts. So it's complicated, but that's the sort of nuanced answer. If you are drinking alcohol, or any type of thing that has a little bit of alcohol, I just recommend you make sure you give yourself a lot of sleep, right? That's really important. Make sure that you're also consuming some food with it or before it at minimum. That way it can metabolize in your body a little bit differently and then not be as, like, bad for your body. The other thing is consuming antioxidants with it. So if you are consuming something that has a little bit of alcohol in it, say like a tincture, right? Those automatically, a lot of them, I'm not going to say all of them do, but a lot of them are based in herbs or some mushrooms, and those already have a ton of antioxidants in it, and so it's counteracting those negatives. So that is my take. Just not a lot of science behind it. It's more of an intuitive, that's what I think. So, Next one is, what's the research on creatine and ADHD? Okay, really cool question. Have any of you tried creatine? Because that's on my list. I want to try creatine, but I also have these fears of, what if I don't like the taste? I don't know what to put it in. I don't know how to consume it. So if you have used creatine, what do you do? First of all, are there any brands that you've liked? I want to do a series of, I tried X supplement for 30 days for my ADHD, and creatine's on one of them, just to see what it does for me as kind of an experiment, because again, I'm not on medication yet and I know I need it, but I'm really curious because there's no research on creatine and ADHD. There is some really good research in general for creatine because I consider it the most researched supplement out there. It's mainly researched, for muscle mass and building, but it is so important for other things than that. What we do know about ADHD and creatine is that people with ADHD tend to have lower creatine, not specifically stores, but the way that our cells have creatine is complicated. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but it's connected a lot with our mitochondria, and we do have differences in general with how our mitochondria work with ADHD versus the general population. And so there is some theoretical, logical pathways that creatine should help ADHD, mainly through giving our cells the energy that it needs and helping our cells create the energy that it needs. So the other thing, we do have research that indicates creatine could help with executive functioning in healthy populations who are under moderate stress. But I think that's the only study related to ADHD symptoms that we have. I guess we do have a few on memory. Again, those are in populations that are either in stress or they are old. So it's really difficult to know. But in general, creatine's super safe. In general, again, discuss with your physician. Never a bad idea, but up to about 5 grams a day. So, I don't know. I really do want to try it, especially since lately my energy levels have been not great. I'll get random bursts of energy, but today, I just had a 3-hour nap randomly because my body has been not it. Could be related to my hormone cycle, though. It is likely related to that. Let's be honest. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I can give myself some grace. Okay, anyway, that's the research on creatine and ADHD and my take on it. The next one was, can fermented foods help with ADHD? This one, again, we don't have research. That is my biggest qualm with ADHD research. We just don't have a lot on the nutrition aspect. I mean, we have a lot, right? I've read, my brain full of it. But we don't have all the stuff that I want. And a lot of those studies aren't actually great. I am friends. His name is Dr. Miguel. I don't remember his last name. He's out of the UK. And he is working on a study on kefir and ADHD. I'm pretty sure he finished the study, just is working on compiling the data right now. So we will know, hopefully by the end of the year, about if kefir could potentially help with ADHD, which is a fermented food. In general, again, it depends on your gut microbiome and everything, but fermented foods usually contain probiotics. Actually, not usually, they do. And in general, it's helpful to have a fermented food every day. So the fermented food that I eat every day is Greek yogurt. Also because it's a really great protein source and really easy for my mornings. I love kombucha as well. And then kefir, I cycle through different kefirs. It's a little tangy for me. But the hard thing with kefir is that a lot of the times it's sweetened and it has a lot of sugar in it. And like I said, we want to reduce, most of us, we want to reduce our added sugar because a lot of us overconsume added sugars. So if there is one thing that I can recommend, if you want to think about reducing something besides alcohol, you can think about reducing your overconsumption of sugar. I usually don't like telling people to reduce things. I like to add before we reduce, but I know a lot of us feel like we want to get rid of things first, and I get it. I feel that too. So just like being mindful about looking at your labels, especially for any type of drinks. Kombucha as well. A lot of kombuchas have a lot of added sugars. So Synergy, I think, is one that doesn't have a lot of added sugars. So I will drink that one. But too much added sugar at one time can not be good for our brain. So yeah, that's the deal on fermented foods and ADHD. Again, we just don't have a lot of research. But it kind of goes back to that other question, right, about different cuisines in ADHD and how I was talking about more Asian cuisines. They tend to have fermented foods every day, which again, so good for us. So, yep. The next question is, does protein with ADHD medication actually help them work better? I think someone asked this question because there was a person on TikTok who was talking about it and saying, like, no, it doesn't help it work better. The truth is, we don't know at all, actually, if it works better or not, because we have 0 research studies on it. We have 2 research studies on fat before, like eating breakfast that has some fat with it before taking your medication. And that seems to help. Not help, but more it metabolizes it a little bit differently. And it's just really complicated. I do have a blog post on that. I'll try to remember to update the description, but if you just go into my blog, my website, you should be able to pull up. You know what? Let me just pull that up right now and tell you the medication that they studied. Give me like 2 seconds. But the biggest thing is we don't know also if it was the fat that was changing the metabolism of the medication, or if it was simply the fact that they ate something. So like it's hard to know because they also didn't take any baseline of like, do you eat breakfast every day? So that's the other thing. Again, like most studies with ADHD nutrition, honestly, they're not great. Like they don't control all the things that I think that they should control. They don't usually have a lot of their sample sizes are usually really low. It's just, we just don't have a lot of funding in this specific area, which is dumb. That's my take. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Let me just read what I wrote. So that study was on Adderall, specifically the extended release. And then basically it didn't change how much your body used. It changed when your body used it. So it's like, it still works, but it was like taking longer to work essentially. And then Vyvanse is a prodrug. So that means it needs to be converted in the body into its active form. And then that means, since it's a prodrug, it could, like a high protein or high fat meal could delay its onset. But the total absorption, similar to the Adderall, should be similar. So those are the few research that we have with protein and ADHD. Other things to know is that some people tend to have some gastrointestinal distress if you don't consume your medication with protein / breakfast in general. So just do some trials and error to see if that's going to make you feel better. That all being said, protein does impact your dopamine in general, and it impacts your blood sugar regulation throughout the day. We talked about that a little bit earlier, how breakfast, especially within 30 to 60 minutes of your morning, like of waking up, it just sets your body up for success metabolically, but also mentally, because it helps you have stable releases of insulin throughout your day. It helps with, actually improves your insulin sensitivity if you consistently eat breakfast, which we love, right? And that can influence your hormone signaling to your brain about your hunger signals, your fullness signals. It's just so important. And the main way that I think it works is through emotional regulation, but it also impacts your executive functioning, because just think about it. Like, if you were not eating breakfast regularly, that's like constantly running your gas tank toward empty every single day. Like, it's not good for the brain, and that's not good for your car. So, yeah, breakfast, very important. Did you know that ADHD is the only mental health related condition that is associated with not eating breakfast? I just think that's a really fun fact. Not one that we should continue to have. I hope that we can change that. I hope that we can, turn that table. But yeah, I just think that's a really fun fact. Okay. Are there any specific vegetables that help improve the executive dysfunction? So, we don't have any specific studies on specific vegetables. We do have, in general, knowledge that vegetables are really good for us. The main reason for this is, the nutrient profile that we find in vegetables. They tend to be really high in the nutrients that are good for ADHD, so especially the darker colored vegetables. If you don't like vegetables, what I do recommend is trying to find at least one dark colored vegetable that you do like or can tolerate, and just try to consistently eat that, like ideally once a day, but if you can only do that 3 times a week, that's better than nothing, right? So the darker color the vegetable, the more antioxidants it has, which is really important for ADHD brains. And then the more nutrients it tends to have. It tends to just be more nutrient dense. So think broccoli is a dark colored vegetable. I consider any like green beans. What else? Asparagus. Oh, that's a really good one. Asparagus is great. So, yeah, darker colored vegetables is what I would recommend. Like, if you have difficulties with vegetables. That being said, you don't have to eat vegetables. I know that that's a sensory thing for a lot of people. Blending them up in soups is a great idea, though. But if you if you can't just do vegetables, just eat a lot of fruit. I know a lot of people are they enjoy fruit more, and that's fine. They contain similar nutrient profiles and they contain similar fiber profiles. They're great. Again, ideally, we're having more of those dark green vegetables. Those tend to be the best for just people in general, but do what you can do. Take little small steps. We did have a recent study on peppers, specifically spicy peppers, that has some caspin in it, and that seems to potentially help a little bit with ADHD. So, but that also kind of comes back to making sure we have flavor in our foods with a lot of spices and herbs and good stuff. So, cucumber, does that count? No. Well, I mean, it does count as a vegetable. So, but it's not a dark vegetable, it's a light vegetable. Do any of you know Dr. Sarah Ballantyne? She is a person that I recommend a lot of people follow if you have questions about the different food families, what is the nutrient profiles of different foods. She does something called Nutrivore. I don't have her book on my shelf up here. I have it downstairs. Honestly, there's a few books I recommend. The ADHD User's Manual from my friend Ludo. I love him. He's Brain Curiosities. But then the other one is Nutrivore from Dr. Sarah Ballantyne. Both of those books they're just really, really good. Very science, but also accessible, and it teaches you how to do things without struggling as much. So, yeah. You said that smoothies are your go-to for breakfast. Lots of raspberries, protein powder, banana, yogurt. Raspberries helped you with your IBS. Oh, that's fascinating. My thesis when I was, back in my master's program was on ADHD and IBS. It was also, it was the intersection of IBS, ADHD, and minority stress. Really interesting. Basically, what I found was that gender identity, so like if you were transgender, and then sexuality, like the more minority your identity was, the worse your ADHD symptoms were and the worse your IBS symptoms were. So even though like technically like they're kind of like they're all like that minority status, like the more minority you get, the worse that is. And I think it just comes back to like what I talk about. We have to learn how to regulate our nervous system because we have a lot of stressors that we're not even aware of. So yeah, it's just really interesting. And because like with our ADHD, we don't even identify stressors as stressors because, like some of them we identify as stressors, but the stressors that we identify, those are stressors that people without ADHD are like, that's a huge stressor. And to us, it's like, oh, we think it's just a small stressor. And yeah, it's just really interesting. Anyway, we were talking about the protein thing and protein breakfast. But yeah, it just, for optimal mental health functioning in general with breakfast and protein, we see that it tends to help if you have protein in your morning. Usually about 30 grams. That's an average. Kind of depends on how heavy you are, how much exercise you do, different variables, but on average, if you can try to get 20 to 30 grams of protein in your morning, you probably are going to feel a pretty good difference in your ADHD symptoms. Maybe not the symptoms itself, but like how you're able to handle those symptoms. So, just think about it. If you're more emotionally regulated, you're not going to perceive like losing your keys as a larger stress, and then it doesn't hurt your ADHD more. So it's just, yeah, that's my thoughts with protein and breakfast and medication. The next one was the research on cocoa and cacao powder and ADHD. Okay, this is one of my favorites. I need to make a video on this because there is some really good research. So cocoa powder is on my list of the top 5 foods that I recommend people with ADHD try to eat as often as I can. The reason is because it's one of the few foods that we have research on that improves dopamine receptor sensitivity. So we want to make sure that our brains can respond to dopamine a little bit better, so why not, right? And the other aspect is that it improves how our brain uses our blood and how it like transfers our blood through it so we can have better attention. And it also helps with, it has a lot of magnesium, which is very important for ADHD. So next week, the Patreon gets the research on magnesium, but following week, all of you get it. So basically, magnesium is really helpful for ADHD. In general, don't know about supplementation. We don't have much research on that, but it does so much for our brains and for our bodies. The other aspect is that it has a lot of flavonols. So the flavonols are those antioxidants that help with the blood circulation in our brain. So we want to make sure that we have, let me try to think of a good analogy. So you know how sometimes your fingers get really numb and cold? That's because you don't have a lot of circulation for some reason there. Hopefully you don't experience that, but I get that. And it's harder to do things with your fingers when they are like that. That's the same with your brain. So the closer things are to your heart, the better circulation it tends to be. The things at the ends, so our fingers, our toes, and even our brain, they don't get as much like it's harder for our body to send blood to it. And so we want to make sure that our body sends a lot of blood to our brain. And a way to do that is through eating a lot of antioxidants, specifically flavonols and polyphenols. And cocoa powder has a lot of flavonols, so we love that. And then let's see if there's anything else with cacao powder or cocoa powder. I know a lot of people have concerns in general about heavy metals in those. You don't need to worry about that. If you do worry about it, get something that's not organic. The research that we have indicates that organic ones have more heavy metals. So, yeah. It's not intuitive, right? Because a lot of us think organic is better, but that's why we have research. So, yep, I just love cacao powder. It's, like I said, on my top 5 foods that I encourage people to eat. Oh, I might as well just say those. Number 1 is salmon. I know that sucks for a lot of y'all who don't like fish, but salmon once a week to twice a week. Good for us. It contains literally almost every single nutrient we need for our ADHD. Plus, it's so good in protein and fats that are really important for us. So, yeah, it's good. Like I said, the other is cacao powder or cocoa powder. Really, we don't have research on if there is a difference in nutrient profiles with cacao or cocoa, so I just go for cocoa because it is cheaper. And then another one is green tea. Green tea is really good for us. I am actually posting this week on L-theanine and green tea and ADHD and the research on that. So if you're not in the newsletter, make sure you join the newsletter. Again, like all of this is in the description. Join the newsletter and then you can get that information on Friday. So, yep, that's really good. And then blueberries. Blueberries is number 4. That is because, well, I actually have a video all on blueberries if you haven't watched that yet. They have really good stuff for our brains. It contains something called an anthocyanin, and that also helps with our blood in our brain. So, yeah, we just want to make sure we have a lot of good blood for our brain and a lot of it circulating, and like the vessels are as open as possible. So, and that's also why we do not smoke, ideally anything, because that can constrict our vessels. And when we have constricted vessels, guess what? Our brain does not get as much blood, and we want blood. So, yeah. The next one, someone said, how can I make better food choices with PDA, pathological demand avoidance? This one's really hard. So, I mean, everyone has different varying levels of PDA. Some of us have 0. Some of us have a lot. So, before I get too deep into it, if you have any ideas, throw it in so I can share some of that for any other people who are watching this retrospectively, because a groupthink here is probably really good. Anyway, I do talk a little bit about this. I think it's in my extended version that you get in the full ADHD manual, nutrition manual. But one trick, if you have some PDA issues, is to have somebody else challenge it. And I know that kind of sounds counterintuitive, because usually you think oh, but if I have PDA, it's going to make it worse and I'm not going to want to eat it at all. The thing is to trick it. Trick your PDA. I know that we talk about tricking your brain. Apparently neurotypicals do not say that. My husband, I told him that one time. It's yeah, I just have to trick my brain. And so I tell it I'm going to do this. I tell it, oh, I really love doing the dishes. This is my hobby. He's like, what? So apparently, if you tell yourself you trick your brain, that is potentially a signal that you might be ADHD. Anyway, back to the conversation. What is helpful, like when I start to, like, I'll eat something and then all of a sudden I feel like I can't eat it anymore. And I'm like, wow, this is so stupid. I know I need to eat. I tell myself, like, this is why I need to eat it. It's really helpful for my body. Like, I need to do all of these things. And then I'll just feel like, wow, but I can't eat it. Like, nope, can't do that. My throat closes up. And then when that happens, my husband will like, yeah, that is stupid. And then that triggers the other aspect of my ADHD where it's like that competition aspect. And it's like, well, no, it's not. I can do it. I'm like, I can prove you wrong, right? And so that is something that has worked for me. And I didn't think of this. My husband just did it one day. I swear he is an actual genius. I mean, he's hella smart. He's a mechanical engineer. He's just also very emotionally intelligent and so tuned into me. I honestly, like, I hope for a relationship like that for every single person. Just, like, how stable he is and how, like, tuned in he is to what I need without me even knowing. So that is something that's helped me. But let's see. Someone said, ladder it, slowly build up with small decisions. And when you run out of things to add in some exercise instead. Eventually, at some point, you'll be addicted to it all, but that will take some time. Honestly, those, like, small additions, really helpful. Another thing, kind of like bouncing off of that idea, is just, like, challenging yourself. Like, if you think, like, wow, I can't eat anything, or, like, you are in your head too much about the thing that you're supposed to be eating, challenge yourself. Be like, wait, I can't eat anything? Could I eat ice cream? And then you're like, yeah, I can eat ice cream. Maybe you can't. Maybe your brain is like, no, I can't do that, because you're so deep into diet culture that, like, that causes you stress to think that. But is there something else that you could be, like, really, really tasty that, like, activates a lot of your dopamine that you could eat? And if the answer is yes, then do that. I don't care if it's not super healthy, quote unquote. Like, the healthy food is the food that you eat, because the main thing here that we want to work on first is consistency. We want to have consistent food intake. That is our baseline. If we're not having consistent food intake, we should not be worrying about what kinds of food we're eating. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people get hung up on, because we get into our brains a lot. And then we try really hard to be perfect, when in reality, the thing that I care about and the thing that's actually going to help your ADHD is just being consistent with the food that you're eating. Eating it 3 times a day. That's the goal. So, yeah. Trying to think of other ideas for PDA that don't involve another person. Like I said, like that challenging your thoughts. Working with a therapist, honestly, or a neurodivergent informed dietitian should help a little bit more. But what I've noticed for PDA is really just that it's a lot in anxiety. It's a lot in overthinking. And when you're in your brain too much, it makes it harder. And this is where it's a little countercultural to say this, but eating distracted, that is okay. I do that all the time, especially like when I'm not around my husband or when he's at work and I know I need to eat something, but I really just hate the idea of eating. And I'm like really mad about the fact that I have to eat. Taking some like regulatory exercises, because that is kind of an anxiety response, right? And working on making my body feel safe enough to eat. So this is in my nervous system regulation book. I have a ton of different nervous system exercises, and it goes through like ways to recognize what type of nervous dysregulation you're in. But one that helps me the most is, it's actually one that my client taught me about like 4 years ago when I was doing in-home mental health work. And basically you look for something blue, and then you look for something red, and then you look for something sparkly, and then, this is where it actually starts helping, you look for an entrance, and then someplace to hide, and then you look for an exit. And the moment I look and identify an exit, my body just feels so safe. Like, I can feel it physically relax. And, like, I've tried so many different exercises. Like, that's why I think it's over 50 different ones in there. That's the one that works for me. And it works almost every single time. And then that actually opens my brain up to being like, okay, we can get outside of my head for a little bit. And then I can focus on, like, what is that one thing that I'm excited about eating? So, yeah. And then you said something about focus on food addition and not food restriction. Yep. Really, honestly, that is the trick. What can I add versus what can I subtract? I try to talk about this, and I don't talk about that enough, honestly. But really, that's the trick for our brains, because think about it. ADHD, we are the people who have more of that toddler brain inside of us, like the two different brains. And when you tell a toddler no, what's it gonna want? And it's gonna cause them more stress. So focusing on what you can add, always good. So if you are like, well, I can eat ice cream, could I add anything on my ice cream? Could I add grapes on my ice cream? Could I add strawberries on my ice cream? If you want to be extra interesting, could I add cheese seeds to my ice cream? Or, I mean, a more classic one would be peanuts, right? So what are things we can do to make it still be like, oh, I can eat this, but I'm still getting some nutrients that are good for me too. So, yeah, I love all that. Also, oh my gosh, it is already 5 o'clock, at least where I am. There is one more thing here that I have, like, what is the research on ADHD and dementia? What can I do to reduce my risk? So I actually have a full ebook in the Patreon. If you are, I think, the middle and the last tiers, you should have access to it still in August, on like dementia and ADHD and the nutrition you can do for it. But let's just talk about some of this stuff here quick. So yes, if you have ADHD, you are at an elevated risk for developing dementia. However, we saw that the risk, but it basically eliminated when you were on medication. And so that just kind of raises the question, like, is it ADHD specifically, or is it something related to ADHD, like untreated ADHD, that is affecting your increased risk? And so that's where we look at the lifestyle. And also, like, what is medication doing to our brains? So what we do know is that medication for, like, people, like, if you are ADHD and you go on stimulant medication, it is improving something called the glutamate to GABA ratio. So we tend to see a little bit more increases in glutamate, which is an excitatory transmitter in our brain, which makes sense, right? Like, we have a lot of energy typically, or our brain is running constantly, and that's connected to that. And we tend to not have enough GABA to balance it. And so GABA is more of that relaxing one that keeps us in like a regulatory state and not so emotionally volatile or not so impulsive. And so what we do see is that the medication can improve those ratios in our brain, which is so, so important. But it can also help us address different lifestyle. Oh, sorry. The reason why I was talking about glutamate is because what we do notice is that too much glutamate consistently is associated with an increased risk of dementia. So that is what it was. And the other thing with that is a lot of people with ADHD have like worse oxidative stress. And we were talking about that a little bit ago with the mitochondria and the creatine. When we don't have adequate working mitochondria, we tend to, or like if we're using too much of it, which is, we don't know for sure what's going on with ADHD, either like, it's probably both, honestly. Either our mitochondria aren't as effective, or we're like using too much, like our body is just like too much. And so that can contribute to oxidative stress, and oxidative stress is associated with an increased risk of dementia. But then also what we see with the research is that stimulant medication, again, can reduce our oxidative stress, which is kind of crazy, and that's actually amazing. And that is independent. There was a different study about antioxidant levels and ADHD. And despite their similar intake, people with ADHD versus the people without ADHD had lower levels of antioxidants, even though they ate the same amounts. So that's also why I always harp on us saying, hey, eat a lot more fiber, because those are the things that have a lot of the antioxidants in it. And eat a lot more herbs and spices, because our bodies are going through those antioxidants way faster. And so that's like kind of what's going on with ADHD and dementia. And then there's, lifestyle factors too. So environment that you're living in, right? Like whether you're living in suburbia versus rural versus inside of a city, like that's going to affect your risk of dementia. Other environmental things could be like pollution, that increases your risk of dementia. And then I think someone was saying that, for some people with ADHD, we see, for some reason, people with ADHD, we see some heavy metal toxicity that's related with dementia. It kind of goes back to how our bodies metabolize different nutrients. And again, it's like kind of confusing, but it's like, I love talking about that. So, but then, right, there's also the exercise aspect. The more that you exercise and move your body, the less risk of dementia you have. And so for a lot of people with ADHD, it can be difficult to get that motivation to do exercise without medication. And so that's where the medication maybe is helping. Also, a more westernized diet that is the high in fat, high in sugar, and low in fiber. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, as good as you can do it, eat more fiber. That's going to help your risk of dementia. And if you have access to medication. And I know a lot of us can't access medication, and that sucks. But there are things that we could do, which, like I said, work on just increasing your fiber if you can. Doing what you can do to do that. So, you just said that I heard dementia referred to as diabetes type 3. So is ADHD related somehow to diabetes then? Actually, yeah, ADHD is related to diabetes. I don't believe it's related to diabetes 1. I think it's to diabetes 2. But people with ADHD, we do tend to see a lot of correlations with insulin resistance. But again, I think it was 32% reduced risk of diabetes type 2 development when you're medicated. So it's pretty cool. Oh yes, raspberries have a high fiber content. They sure do. If I remember right, I think they have the highest fiber content of the berries. Don't quote me on that, but I'm 99% sure. What is it? Almost 8 grams of fiber per 1/4 of a cup. I'm not positive, but I'm I recently was working on this for the cookbook. So in the cookbook, also if you're not on the waitlist for the cookbook, go to my website, join the waitlist for the cookbook. It should be coming out. It was a little ambitious to say it was going to come out in August. It's probably going to come out in October. But one of the sections in the introduction is really the best fiber sources for ADHD. And yeah, raspberries, so good for us. So high in fiber, and they taste amazing. The thing that sucks is berries are expensive. But that is the hard part. I always recommend people just get frozen things, especially if you have ADHD in general, because then they don't go bad because they're in your freezer. and you can make some pretty mean smoothies with them, and then you still get that fiber, but they don't go bad in your fridge, and they still taste good. So, yeah. Oh no, your drive failed and you lost all your files with your spreadsheets? That's horrible. Wow, that really sucks. I'm so sorry. Anyway, before we finish out, do we have any other thoughts or questions that we want to talk about? I'm trying to think if I have any. I always have things I can talk about. I feel like my brain is running so fast all the time. Right now it feels a little, oh my gosh. Do you get that when your brain goes so fast and then your words come out, they don't come out very well? That is my one fear with public speaking, that I will start to get too excited and then my words will come out very slurred and very just all the words at the same time. I really do want to do some public speaking though, because I think that'd be really fun in general. So, but yeah. As always, more questions, throw that into the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, join. I'm pretty sure I recognize some of you from the Discord. But yes, that is the best way to just hang out in general, get a lot of the information, the newsletter as well. That one, like I said, is coming out on Friday, and we're talking about L-theanine and green tea, what is the research with that. And then if you're not on the Patreon yet and you want to, make sure that you join our monthly call where I actually get to see you and your faces, and we get to discuss things that are going to help your ADHD in general, not just with nutrition. That is tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Time, so make sure you join the Patreon. And then also with the Patreon, the new book that's coming out is on ADHD and hormones and the research behind that, specifically estrogen and testosterone. That's coming out on Friday, so make sure that if you join today or tomorrow so that you get last month's book as well as August's book. So last month's book, so July book, that was on ADHD and emotions and understanding body signals versus emotions and how can we connect the two together. So, all right. Well, I will see you wherever you land. I'm really happy to chat with y'all. This was really fun. And I'm 99% sure we'll do this next week. Just join the Discord so that you know for sure. Okay?